All right, everybody, welcome back to the RSI Podcast, episode number 18. Happy to have you back. The questions have been coming in very regular. We've got a list of them, so if we haven't gotten to your questions yet, please be patient. We are working through them, but continue to send those questions. It's really cool to see the momentum that this podcast is starting to pick up. So RSI Podcast at foamfrat.com, or you can find us on the Foam Frat website when you're there checking out the refresher. I'll have links in the show notes for all of that. But Jared and I are excited to hear from you. We have a new guest on today, so hope you enjoy episode number 18 with Tony Henry. All right, so Tony, welcome to the RSI Podcast. We're excited to have you here. New-ish member of the Foam Frat team, so we wanted people to get to know you. So who's Tony Henry?
Well, that is me. I am a Iowa to Texas transplant. Recently, I guess you could say, almost 4 years down here now. Love it. I work for a local fire department around the Houston area as a firefighter, paramedic, and also just recently picked up a side job flying part-time and learning a lot through that. The whole new education aspect of everything is pretty new to me. Still learning a lot. I'm having a good time. A lot of cool people to learn from, and just all sorts of fun stuff to do. So
sweet. Yeah, the flight job's going to be a lot of fun. I know when I started, the first thing that I realized is that I really didn't know anything.
Ain't that the
was
truth?
Probably the most depressing part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
How are you doing with that, by the way?
Most of the the boring stuff is kind of out of the way with the meetings in the hospital and the going over the guidelines, and now we're just kind of down to the doing the clinical portion, so to speak.
Cool.
Have
the
to
fun
do
part.
X amount of OR rotations, and you kind of just intertwine them with being your regular shifts and flying. So it's kind of fun.
They're going to pull you away from that fire medic mentality that you have.
Probably so.
Oh wait,
Not
I'm surrounded right
necessarily a
now.
bad thing.
You're
outnumbered.
2-1. It's a 2-1
I'll say
ratio.
you're the only
Damn
one
it.
that's not anymore. You were.
Yeah, I was like 8 years ago. I got away from. I knew that it So all right. I can't have the whole world knowing that I constantly talk about fire medics. It's because I actually want to be one when I grow up.
You miss the good old days.
You can't be a firefighter and grow up. That's it's science.
Oh shit. Well, maybe my resume is perfect for the job.
You're hired.
Question number 1, Tony, is should EMS become civil service like law enforcement and city fire? And do you think it can happen in the United States before universal health care?
So I'm not too terribly familiar with other states, but in Texas, civil service code is under the 143 subsection, and each city will adopt that, and it's voted on if they want their fire and police officers to be civil service. And I'm assuming most states are the same. And specifically written in there for the state of Texas, it's specific for fire and police. And then there's a clause in there saying that if the fire department runs the EMS calls, the firefighters that are doing the EMS portion have to be fire certified to be considered civil service. So it would take quite a bit here in Texas, a lot of political movement and rewriting of that law in order for your city EMS services to be able to jump on board with that. A lot of what we have around here is either private service or county-run services, and county-run services are even county-run agencies, police departments, they're excluded from civil service. I think Harris County is the only sheriff's office that's a civil service sheriff's office within the state of Texas, and that dates back, to my understanding, to someone who wanted that to happen and got himself into a place of power and made that happen for the Harris County Sheriff's Office and only the Harris County Sheriff's Office. So it would take quite a bit of political action and movement in order for that to happen, I think. It's not impossible by any means. I know there's a lot of agencies that have found loopholes and undertaken the EMS service kind of under the fire department's wings, but stayed separate, if that makes sense, and then dual certified everybody and kind of got, them civil service credentialed, so to speak, that way, even though they're not functioning as firefighters. So I can't speak for any other states besides Texas necessarily.
Yeah, I think a lot of states probably have similar legislation to that. But so as I looked at this, I was kind of trying to conceptualize what they were really asking, because they asked about before universal healthcare. And I think that what we have to remember is throwing tax money at something or making something a portion of a public model doesn't fix a problem. So necessarily. So if there's an issue there, then it's not necessarily in and of itself making it civil service going to fix the issue. I think what we really need to do is make sure that we continue to elevate the profession. And we've talked about this on this podcast ad nauseum about degrees and continued advocacy for elevation of the field, because EMS, we've got to, I think what's more important than civil service is trying to break away from our DOT roots and get more into healthcare, being a part of the community's healthcare program, and that process, I think, is going to pay more dividends than necessarily looking towards a civil service model. Some things that aren't necessarily all transport based. And there's a lot of these things that are in the works as we see changes with billing and being able to bill for different things and capture different revenues, some alternate service models, maybe where we're not burning our paramedics out with, running a lot of calls that are maybe those lower acuity calls that could be handled in a different means. So I think that's maybe a direction to head in, more of making us public health as opposed to transportation, and elevating the profession that way instead of saying, hey, let's just make it civil service and see if that fixes it.
I think a benefit of being able to be deemed civil service would be you have the opportunity now to meet with your city officials and take part of collective bargaining agreements. And even if the city doesn't want to go as far as collective bargaining and they want to do meet and confer, I think that opens up and allows some greater opportunities to say, hey, this is our worth. This is what we want to migrate towards, kind of, as said, more away from the DOT transport aspect, but more of a community health division or something like that. And that would open those doors for you to say, hey, this is what we feel that we need to make our jobs work efficiently and not burn out our employees, and etc.
Yeah, and I don't really have anything to add to that. Yeah, it's like I'm in agreement. I think fire and EMS should be separate. I'm not saying that we can't work together, but I think I would lean more towards the mic I want to push us more towards healthcare services than civil services, but honestly, anything that's going to elevate our career and potentially push us in the right direction, I'll support as well. So,
all right, Jared, you ready? Question number 2 coming at you. Excluding anything from the IBSC, I have my FPC and CCPC. What are some extra certifications or classes you guys recommend looking into that you've found to be beneficial? Go.
Yeah. So I'm going to be kind of generic with it and say that if there's an alphabet soup class that you haven't taken and you're interested in education, by all means, go and take it. I don't think there's any harm in somebody, let's say a nurse has TNCC, taking PHLS, TPATC, or ATLS, ITLS, whatever variation of it. If you're geared towards education, you want to learn more, I don't see anything wrong with the alphabet soups, but that's not going to be my primary suggestion. My primary suggestion, and we've actually talked about it on previous podcasts, Mike, is critical care paramedic school. And when I say critical care paramedic school, it may not necessarily come with, an extra certification or maybe alphabet soup letters behind your name. I just think that general education is superior than just about anything you're going to get out there. And what I mean is not, and I'm not bashing on any of the critical care courses that are out there currently, like Flight Bridge Ed, Flight Crit, IMED, any of those. What I'm saying is take a semester long critical care paramedic course at a college where week by week you're getting assignments, you're writing papers, you are involving yourself in case studies. And although that might not be a certification to, whoever might be asking the question, I think you will get the most benefit out of something like that. And to which I did as well. I took, the Flight Bridge Ed course, all these other courses, but for me, hands down, the semester long critical care course that I took was probably by far the most beneficial.
Yeah, I can see where that would have huge benefit, and that's a big undertaking. That's a lot to that's a lot to do, but you're obviously going to reap the benefits of that. Hopefully, I mean that's the idea. But I think that higher level of education is always going to help. When I saw this question come through, the first thing that I thought of, the class that was like outside of the regular, like you say, the alphabet soup classes, because so many of those are just based on your instructor. You're going to get out of it what the instructor decides to bring to it. So, I mean, there's some good core curriculum, obviously, that comes along with those, but a lot of it is based on the instructor. And I would say, hands down, one of the courses that I took that benefited me the most was a ultrasound course. And so the agencies that I work for, we don't utilize ultrasound yet. I hope that it's coming. I hope that it's coming soon. But in helping me to gain a better understanding of anatomy, physiology, and just being able to think through different illnesses and really understand what's going on, that really helped me because I'm very visual. So being able to see that and add another dimension and see depth, it was really impactful for me. Even though I can't use it yet as a diagnostic, it really helped me out. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention real quick, and then I'm going to punt this over to Tony. I know this is going to be kind of more specific to the fire folks, but the National Fire Academy, if you ever have an opportunity to get out there, I've been out there a couple times to take 2-week classes, and it's kind of similar to that university setting. You're writing papers, you're doing research. There's a lot going on. They have all kinds of stuff when it comes to. I took a origin and cause class out there that was awesome, taught by the ATF. I've been out there for some leadership courses, and it's a great opportunity. So if it's something that's provided to you, please take advantage of it. Tony, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll kind of add on to mostly what Jared had to say. And I was lucky enough to be able to find some time to go do a in-person critical care program at a major university. And it involved hands-on clinical time, which is what you're not going to get by doing any of the Flight Bridge Ed, IMED, stuff like that, which those are all great products to utilize, like Jared said. But, it's one thing to look at slides and videos, and it's another thing to get in there and help a patient on ECMO walk up and down a hall and become familiar with, how that's working, and get to see, patients with balloon pumps and stuff like that. So I think that is almost invaluable, being able to go there under a clinical education teaching setting, and have people trust you too. You can go there and, hey, this guy's in a critical care program, let's show him everything we've got to show him. And I think that's pretty fun. And if you're looking for something you can just do at home, the most recent one I've retaken and re-upped on that I was like, man, I am not up to where I need to be, was NRP. I thought it was actually a really good class. It opened my eyes for a whole lot of stuff with the tiny humans, and it's, there's hybrid versions you can do at home, and makes it relatively feasible with a busy schedule.
Yeah, I think PEDS is like the universal weakness.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I know it's mine, and I totally agree. NRP was great, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I didn't think about it originally, but it got my hands on some equipment. I got to talk to some NICU nurses that were teaching the course, and I learned a lot from them.
Yep. All right, question 3 from Mike. So it comes in saying, as someone who's going to be getting paramedic students for the first time, what are some tips for a first-time preceptor to make the most of a student's day?
So this question was awesome, and it just made my heart smile. And I know that because like last podcast, we talked about some stuff with preceptor and preceptee relationships, and how some of that should work out. But it got me thinking back to when I first started to precept people, and I still do. I think something that we've got to understand, especially as new preceptors, there's 3 words that are really, really, really hard to say. And that's I don't know. But they're very, very important words to say. If you don't have an answer for a question that they have, don't be afraid to say, I don't know. Don't let your ego get in the way, because the first time you try to BS them and they find out that it was incorrect, you could be taking them down a path that doesn't go in the right direction. But B, you're going to destroy that trust, and you're really never going to get that back. So don't ever be afraid to say, I don't know. And when it comes to, because now you're starting to get new people that are new to the profession. There's a book that I read not too long ago, Grit by Angela Duckworth. So she talks about grit basically being the combination or intersection of passion and perseverance. And I think that's what you're getting to see early on in these newer people. You want to be able to show your passion for the profession, and don't be afraid of that. All too often people get caught up in negativity and things like that, but show your passion for the profession and cultivate theirs. If you don't see that they have a passion for it, try and figure out why. Because this is that time when they're discovering, hey, is this for me or not? Because interest without purpose or passion is really, really difficult to maintain for the long haul. So I think that's very, very important. And then one more thing that I wanted to discuss, and then I'll kind of punt it back to the other guys. I think it's important to understand that we really should try to pull people towards us and lead them as we're trying to teach them things, as opposed to pushing them. When you push someone, you're really creating more distance than if you pull them towards you and try to elevate them to the level that you'd like to see them at, or that you'd like to help them achieve. So when you pull them closer, you actually close that gap instead of pushing them. I know it's semantics, but there's some psychology to it, and it can really help maybe connect with that newer person. So what do you guys think?
Sorry for the bump there. I can hear my neighbor's dogs like attacking each other. So for me, I'm in agreement with you. I think trust is a huge thing. I think the very first thing I do if I have a student, especially if it's a student I think is going to be one that I see consistently, is know my weaknesses and know my strengths, as I want to know their weaknesses and their strengths, so that we can almost feed off of each other. But then it's also let's build some trust. I know that I've had some bad experiences with preceptors when I was going through paramedic school, and I don't ever want to be that preceptor to a student. And a lot of it comes back to preceptors getting angry with their students. So I kind of have this conversation, and I'm not an easily angered person. So I basically just have the honest conversation with them. I was like, I will never get mad at you for not knowing something. I will never be mad at you for asking me a question. I will never be mad at you for hesitate. Like, I'm here to help you, to assist you with everything. What will make me mad is you doing something knowing you had no idea how to do it, especially if it's like intervention led and you just continue to do it, and it could be something that's harmful to the patient. Just be open, just be honest with me. If you don't feel comfortable with it, or you need me to literally hold your hand through it, I will. But don't ever knowingly not know how to do something that could be harmful, that could lead to something dangerous for the patient. And like, maybe it's a speech, it could be a little intimidating at times, but I'm literally just being blunt and honest with you. If you're honest with me, I will be honest with you. We'll build trust amongst each other.
I think,
well said, Tony.
Yeah, I agree. I think everything you just said is exactly the same as what you told me 8 years ago when I was your student. I'm pretty sure. And
so Jared hasn't gotten any better.
Hey,
no, it's a little better.
Found a way that works. Found a way that works and sticks with it. But Jared, I did have him as a preceptor both during paramedic school and during my new hire phase, and oftentimes I look back and I think about clinicals during paramedic school and what made me want to go back to this station or this department versus not wanting to go back to this one. And a lot of times it was just that preceptor being honest and saying, hey, this is what I expect out of you. This is what I have to offer you. Take it or leave it. And then, I think a big part of it is just not alienating the student. Sometimes it's easy for a student to come in and, hey, go take your book and sit in that corner. Like, it's good for self-initiated study. I appreciate any students that ever try to do that. But I think, when you include them in and say, hey, bring your book over here and let's see what you're going over, see if I have anything that's worthwhile to offer, and that's the type of stuff that'll draw a student back too. If they're kind of up in the air on where they want to finish out some ride times or clinical times in the hospital.
Yeah. 100%. Like, I've had some bad preceptors, almost to the point where I'm like, man, do I have to work with people like this? Like, if being a paramedic means I got to work with guys like that, I don't want to do this. Like, this is not for me. So
that's the preceptor that you definitely don't want to be. And I think some of that comes back to praise. I mean, we need to be able to provide that to people that we precept, be that new employees or students, because praise is going to cause a behavior to be repeated. But we have to be somewhat careful, because if we use it for just routine things, then it loses some of its impact and its power. So I'm not talking about like constant praise. I'm not talking about like everybody gets an award, everybody gets a trophy, but praise for those things that we want to have repeated. And not rewarding people for things they're supposed to do. Not that, oh my gosh, you're so amazing, you checked out the truck this morning, or you did the inventory. That's not what I'm getting at. I hate that showing up is half the battle saying. It's not. Showing up isn't. You haven't done anything yet. So showing up isn't half the battle. If someone calls 911 and all we do is show up, we don't do anything to fix the problem, are they going to think that we did something spectacular? No. But we've got to be able to use praise and use it appropriately to get the repeated actions that we're looking for. And something else that I think gets underestimated is the use of impactful, relevant stories when you're precepting, because if you can tie emotion to new information that someone's trying to retain, that's gonna drive that retention, and that's gonna help them learn things if you can tie emotion to it. So I'm not talking like constant war stories, but impactful, relevant things that can tie an emotion to something they're trying to learn.
So our last question: how do you recommend debriefings be conducted post-critical calls? The DoD approach of each member listing 3 good things and then 3 items needing improvement, while time-honored seems to be too disjointed and likely to overlook key items. Do you recommend the hot wash approach or the fire service version, sometimes called the tailboard debrief, that is done on scene minutes after the incident? The EMS approach of waiting till the next shift again seems to lose too much learning opportunities. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah. So I agree. I think waiting does lose a lot of opportunity, and those post call debriefings that happen that far after the fact seem to be more like procedure based, or looking at adherence to policy and things like that. It's not really driving improvement. I don't think. So the simulation center that I work at, I assist with doing formal debriefing after the simulations. And just to kind of break the ice between the people that are in there, we always start with, hey, tell me one good thing and one thing that you would do different. I don't like to say one bad thing because it has a negative connotation, and sometimes people are less likely to really share something if you label it as bad. But it's something that you would maybe do different the next time. So one good thing and something that you would do different next time can be beneficial. But I think, so what helps me the most, and I think what I've seen help people the most, is each person simply discussing what they saw and what they did and working through that with each one of the crews. So, they talk about a tailboard debriefing or whatever with the fire service. And that's where I really noticed how useful this really was. And it was really, it really became evident to me when I became a new lieutenant. Because I was trying to transition from being a line firefighter to now being a frontline supervisor. And what I wanted to learn was how those experienced officers, noticed things. And if they saw something that I didn't see, I wanted to be able to talk to them after the fact. And this was an amazing opportunity to be able to go up to them and say, hey, you mentioned that you saw XYZ. How did you notice that? And that's going to help me to drive my ability to stay oriented, to pick up things from the scene. And it works the same way on the flight side or with EMS calls, I think, because I've done it with nurse partners that I've had. Just talk to them. Hey, that observation that you made, or what we talked about, that that kind of differential in the direction that we were heading, how did you get there? And understanding that person's thought process can help you to better formulate your plans. And I think that the more immediate it is after the incident, the more beneficial that it's going to be. We all put bias into things as time goes on. So as time goes on, you think about how you would have done it different, or you start to defend what you did and, kind of morph things. So I think you get a better, true debriefing and true improvement if it's immediate, because the most beneficial feedback is that immediate feedback. And that's going to allow somebody to potentially make a change. I think wait until the next shift or longer, like I said, just brings in more bias. Especially depending on what kind of culture you have at the place that you work. If there's a just culture, if you feel as though you can come forward with missteps or with opportunities for improvement. So I know we've talked about just culture before, so I'm not going to get off on that tangent, but what do you guys think?
I think there's two important aspects to look at when you're looking at a debriefing after something like this. And I think right off the bat, you need to realize, is this a type of event that's going to cause, some people to really struggle, mental health wise? Is it a pediatric code? Is it a multi-trauma, multiple death event that we need to have a CISM type thing right off the bat? And if that's the case, it's important to disconnect the what went right and what went wrong debriefing from the, hey, here's what happened, how's everybody doing? Because as soon as you start saying, well, if engine 12 would have done this, this wouldn't have happened. You start getting a lot of finger pointing, kind of get away from the what you're trying to do and accomplish portion of that. And I think both of them need to be done the same day. I do. I think, like you said, you start hyper analyzing everything that went on as time goes on, and then you're like, well, I can justify why I did this and this and this, and well, maybe I shouldn't have done this, but even though I did, it's fine. So I think it's important to keep the two, the critical incident stress management aspect away, and I think that's very important from the, hey, how are we going to improve on this operationally for when this happens again, whether it be a structure fire or, a complex medical call or, mass casualty of some variety. So I think it's important to keep those separate.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, I appreciate you mentioning the critical incident stress debriefing or stress management, whatever however you want to refer to it. I think that's a good thing to bring in. Because I had kind of read the question more as like a tactical debrief, but
I think it could be read both ways.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something great to bring up, because we always want to make sure that we're addressing that mental health side of it, because it is so important. And ironic that you would bring it up this month. September is National Suicide Awareness Month. So it's definitely something that needs to be on the forefront, and something that we should be discussing, is how we work through some of those critical incidents, and how we can process those mentally and move through and have a long, healthy career, both physically and emotionally. Being a person that's lost a coworker to suicide, it's something very difficult to experience, and it's something that you really kind of re-experience several times over again. So that mental health side is very important. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Tony. Jared, you got anything?
No, you guys are both poetic this time around. I'm just not familiar with this hot wash or the tailboard debriefs, so I was like, you guys take the reins on this one. Now, I have been part of, CISD's critical incident stress debriefings, however, whatever your agency wants to call it. Mm-hmm. And I've had some that are amazing, and I'm so happy that I went and sat through it. And then there's been some I was like, this is the biggest fucking waste of time that I've ever had. And it kind of goes back to like the alphabet soup classes. Who's leading it? I think dictates whether it's good or bad. And then I think the attitude of other people coming in. I have been to some CISDs that are full of people who are just there because it seemed like the cool thing to do. Like, they weren't there because it truly affected them. They weren't there because, I don't know, XYZ reasons. It was almost like, well, this is a good Facebook post. And as shitty as that sounds, I'm like, why are you here? You're ruining this event for the people who truly do give a shit or actually need this. And it just brings down the environment of the room, and then it almost becomes useless. So
yeah, for sure. And I totally agree. Having been through them, it's more about the facilitator, just like it is about the instructor with the courses. And something that I've told people before, because people have come to me and they're like, hey, I don't really want to go to this session because I don't feel I feel fine. I don't feel like I'm having any problems. And, sometimes it can be latent. Sometimes you don't feel that you are. But what I explained to this person is I think that it's still important for you to go, because what you have to add or offer might help someone else.
Exactly.
So even if it's, hey, I'm fine, I don't need this, or I don't think that I need this, you could have that piece that unlocks something for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
That's 100% true. I actually, Tony, I think this was a little bit before your time, but we had a flight paramedic from a really bad drowning incident we had between two younglings. And flight paramedic showed up and showed up to the scene, flew one of the patients away. But when we went to the stress debrief, he showed up, and he showed up late. So I guess nobody was expecting him. Nobody even heard that he was going to be there. And honestly, his perspective might have been one of the most helpful for all of us there, so.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Episode number 18. Hope you really enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed getting to know Tony. We appreciate what he had to add and what he brings to the table. So get your questions in for the next episode. This is your opportunity to design your own podcast. RSI Podcast at foamfret.com. We're always excited to hear from you. So everybody have a safe day. Thanks a lot.